My name is Dinah Rose Harper, and I was born in the cotton fields of Alabama under a sky that never belonged to me. I came into this world on an August night in 1831, when the air hung thick and heavy like wet wool, and my mama's screams mixed with the singing of the cicadas. She told me later that she prayed I would be born silent, born still, because she knew what kind of life waited for a girl child on the Whitmore plantation. But I came out crying, loud and insistent, as if I was already protesting the world I'd been thrown into. They say a baby doesn't remember those first moments, but I swear I carry something from that night, some knowledge that settled into my bones before I even opened my eyes. The knowledge that I was not my own. I grew up in the quarters, in a cabin made of rough-hewn logs chinked with mud and moss. The gaps in the walls let in the winter wind and the summer mosquitoes, and at night, I could see stars through the spaces in the roof. My mama, Essie, worked in the big house as a laundress, and my father, well, I never knew my father. Mama wouldn't speak of him, but sometimes I caught her looking at me with an expression I couldn't name, something between sorrow and shame, and I learned not to ask. There were 12 of U.S. children in the quarters when I was small, and we ran wild between the cabins when we weren't needed in the fields. We played games with corn cobs and sang songs that our mamas taught us, songs that came from somewhere far away, from a place we'd never seen but somehow remembered. I had a friend named Lucy, and we were inseparable. Two girls who whispered secrets in the darkness and promised each other we'd always be sisters, no matter what. I think I was happy then. In that particular way, a child can be happy even in hell, when you don't yet understand that hell is all there is. Everything changed when I turned 10 years old. That's when Master Whitmore decided I was old enough to be useful. They took me from my mama's cabin and put me to work in the big house, in the kitchen under the supervision of Cook Bethy, a large woman with hands that could be gentle or brutal, depending on her mood and the master's temperament. I learned to move quietly, to keep my eyes down, to make myself small and invisible even as I stood right in front of white folks. I learned that I existed only to serve, but there was one thing, one small thing, that belonged only to me. When the day's work was done and the white folks had retired to their rooms, when the candles were snuffed and the house settled into darkness, I would slip out to the cabin where old Thomas lived. Old Thomas was near 80 years old, bent and gnarled like an ancient tree, but his mind was sharp as a new blade. And old Thomas could read. He'd learned as a boy, back when his first master had been a peculiar kind of cruel man who believed even slaves should know the Bible so they'd understand their duty to obey. That master had died, and old Thomas had been sold south, and he'd kept his knowledge secret for 40 years, knowing that in Alabama, a slave who could read was a dangerous thing. But he taught me, in the flickering light of tallow candles, with the words of a stolen Bible and newspapers pulled from the trash behind the big house, old Thomas taught me to make sense of those mysterious marks on paper. It took months, but slowly the letters began to form words, and the words began to form ideas, and the ideas began to form a picture of a world much larger than the Whitmore plantation. I was 12 years old when I read my first full sentence. All men are created equal. I remember staring at those words, reading them over and over, feeling something crack open inside my chest. I looked at old Thomas, and he looked back at me with eyes that held a lifetime of bitter knowledge. "They don't mean us, child," he said quietly. "But you remember those words anyway. You remember that somebody, somewhere, thought to write them down." Reading became my secret rebellion, my hidden act of defiance. Every word I learned was a small piece of freedom I stole back from the people who owned my body. I read everything I could find, discarded newspapers, old letters, the labels on medicine bottles, the torn pages of books used to wrap goods from town. I consumed words the way a starving person consumes bread, and with each word I grew stronger inside, even as my body grew more bent under the weight of labor. By the time I turned 16, I could read better than most white folks I knew. I understood things about the world that slaves weren't supposed to understand. I knew that there were places in the North where people like me lived free. I knew that there were people, even white people, who believed slavery was wrong. I knew that the arguments Master Whitmore made about natural order and biblical justification were lies built on lies, pretty words designed to excuse an ugly truth. And I began to dream. Oh, how I dreamed. I dreamed of a future where I would be more than property, more than a body to be used. I dreamed of standing in a schoolhouse, teaching children to read. I dreamed of choosing my own path, making my own decisions, owning the product of my own labor. These dreams felt as real to me as the ground beneath my feet, as necessary as breathing. I shared these dreams with only one person, Samuel. Samuel belonged to the Crawford plantation 5 miles down the road, but he came to Whitmore land every few months when Master Crawford loaned him out for carpentry work. He was tall and strong, with hands that could coax beauty from rough wood, and eyes that saw me, really saw me, in a way no one else ever had. We fell in love the way young people do, quickly and completely, with a desperation born from knowing that everything could be taken away at any moment. We talked about running. Late at night, hidden in the shadows of the tobacco barn, we whispered about the Underground Railroad, about following the North Star, about the free states where we could be married properly, where our children would be born into freedom. Samuel was cautious, wanting to plan everything carefully, to save money, to wait for the right moment. But I was impatient. I was 17 years old, and I could feel my future calling to me, could see it shimmering just beyond reach like a mirage. I wanted to run immediately, to start our life together, to claim the destiny I'd been dreaming about for so long. Soon, Samuel would promise, holding my hands in his. Soon, Dinah rose. We'll make our move soon. I believed him. I believed in us. I believed in the future we were planning, believed in it so fiercely that it felt like something I could reach out and touch. I didn't know yet that belief is an armor, that dreams can't protect you from the casual cruelty of men who see you as livestock. I didn't know that everything could be stolen in a single morning, with a single decision made by people who never considered for one moment that I was human enough to have a future worth protecting. The day they took my future started like any other day. I woke before dawn in the small room off the kitchen where I slept, listening to the mockingbirds begin their morning songs. I dressed in the dim light, pulling on the plain homespun dress that was my uniform, tying my hair back with a strip of cloth. My hands moved through the familiar routine, while my mind wandered to Samuel, as it always did. He was supposed to come to the plantation that week to repair the frames on the windows in the East Wing. 3 more days, maybe 4, and I'd see him again. I went about my morning duties, starting the fire in the kitchen hearth, fetching water from the well, helping cook Bethy prepare breakfast for the White family. The kitchen was already warm when the sun rose, heat pouring from the cook stove where biscuits were baking and ham was frying. The smell of coffee, real coffee, which we never tasted, filled the air. I was carrying a tray of food to the dining room when I heard Master Whitmore's voice, and something in his tone made me slow my steps, made me listen even though I knew the danger of eavesdropping. The Crawford boy, Mistress Whitmore, was saying, "Are you certain? Saw them myself last month, meeting behind the tobacco barn," Master Whitmore replied. "And Johnson told me he's seen them before that. The girl's been sneaking around with him for near about a year, he reckons." My heart stopped. The tray trembled in my hands, dishes rattling together. "Well," Mistress Whitmore said, and I could hear the cold calculation in her voice. "We can't have that kind of carrying on. It disrupts the order of things. Young bucks getting ideas about choosing their own women. Next thing you know, they'll be running off, thinking they have some say in the matter." "Already thought of that," Master Whitmore said. "I've been meaning to breed her anyway. She's strong, healthy, smart enough. Good breeding stock. I've had offers for her before, but I think it's time to keep the increase here on our own land." Breeding stock. The words hit me like a physical blow. I stood frozen in the hallway, bile rising in my throat. "Who did you have in mind?" Mistress Whitmore asked, as casually as if they were discussing which bull to put with which cow. "Big Joe. He's proven, already sired 6 children on 3 different girls. And he's docile. Won't give her any foolish ideas about love or running off. I'll tell her today." I don't remember setting down the tray. I don't remember walking back to the kitchen. I only remember the roaring in my ears, the way the floor seemed to tilt beneath my feet, the taste of copper in my mouth as I bit down on my tongue to keep from screaming. Big Joe. They were giving me to Big Joe. He was 40 years old, with a blank expression and slow movements, a man who'd been beaten into submission so thoroughly that there was nothing left inside him but obedience. He did whatever he was told, felt whatever he was supposed to feel, thought whatever he was permitted to think. He was everything I feared becoming, a person hollowed out, emptied of selfhood, a body walking around with no soul inside. And they were going to make him my husband. They were going to force me to bear his children, to create new property for Master Whitmore's estate, to become a mother to babies who would be born into chains. All my dreams, all my plans, all the future I'd been building in secret with Samuel. Gone. Erased. Stolen by 2 people who'd made a decision over breakfast, without once considering that I might have my own desires, my own hopes, my own will. Cook Bethy found me in the corner of the kitchen, shaking so hard my teeth chattered. She took one look at my face and understood. "You heard," she said quietly. I nodded, unable to speak. She sighed, a long, weary sound. "I'm sorry, child. I'm sorry. I can't," I whispered. "I can't do it. I won't." Her face hardened. "You don't have a choice, Dinah Rose. None of us have choices." "Then what's the point?" The words burst out of me, loud and anguished. "What's the point of being alive if we're just things to be used? What's the point of having a mind and a heart if we're not allowed to use them?" "The point," Cook Bethy said, gripping my shoulders, "is that you survive. You endure. You live long enough that maybe someday things change." But I didn't want to endure. I didn't want to survive if survival meant becoming a breeding animal, meant giving up Samuel, meant watching my children grow up as property. I wanted to live, really live, and that had been stolen from me before I'd ever had the chance to taste it. Master Whitmore called me to the library that afternoon. He sat behind his big desk, surrounded by books he'd never read, and told me what he decided for my life, as if he was discussing the weather. "You'll be married to Big Joe at the end of the month," he said. "I expect you to be dutiful and produce healthy children. If you give me any trouble, if you try to run or refuse your duties, I'll sell your mother south to the sugar plantations." Do you understand me? I understood. I understood that he held all the power, that he could destroy anyone I loved, that my choices were obedience or the destruction of my family. "Yes, Master," I said, the words like ashes in my mouth. That night, I slipped away to old Thomas's cabin. He was sitting by a small fire, and he looked at me with such sorrow that I knew he'd already heard. "They're taking everything," I said, my voice breaking. "Samuel, my dreams, my future. They're taking it all." Old Thomas was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "They can take your body, child. They can take your time and your labor and your freedom, but they can't take what's in here." He tapped his head, or here, he tapped his chest. "What you know, what you feel, what you understand about yourself and the world, that belongs to you. That's the part of your future they can never touch." "What good is that?" I asked bitterly. "What good is knowing I'm human if I have to live like an animal?" "All the good in the world," he said firmly, "because knowing it means you can teach it. To your children if you have them. To others who are losing hope. The future they took from you, the schoolhouse, the freedom, the choosing your own path, that was one kind of future. But there's another kind of future you can still build. A future inside yourself. A future made of knowledge and resistance and refusing to let them make you believe their lies about what you are." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to find comfort in his words. But all I felt was a howling emptiness where my dreams used to be. I managed to get word to Samuel through one of the field hands who traveled between plantations. I couldn't see him. Master Whitmore was watching me too closely, but I sent a message. They're making me marry Big Joe. They found out about us.
I'm sorry.
His reply came back 2 days later, carried by the same field hand. Run away with me. Tonight. Meet me by the creek. At midnight. We'll head north together. My heart leaped, then immediately sank.
Run.
Just run. It sounded so simple, so possible. But Master Whitmore's threat hung over me like an axe waiting to fall. If I ran, he'd sell my mama south, and the sugar plantations were death sentences. She'd be worked to death within a year, and she'd die knowing I'd caused it. Could I do that? Could I trade my freedom for her life? Could I trade my love for Samuel for my duty to my mother? I spent that night awake, torn apart by the decision. Every part of me wanted to run to Samuel, to take the chance, to fight for the future we'd planned. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw my mama's face, saw her being loaded onto a wagon heading south, saw her looking back at me with betrayal and grief. I didn't go to the creek. I stayed in my room and listened to the clock tick away the minutes past midnight, each tick marking another moment of the life I was choosing not to live. Samuel left without me. I learned later that he'd waited until dawn before finally accepting that I wasn't coming. He ran alone, heading north toward Tennessee. I never saw him again, never knew if he made it to freedom or was caught and dragged back to hell. 3 weeks later, on a Sunday afternoon after services, Master Whitmore stood me and Big Joe up in front of the other slaves and declared us married. There was no ceremony, no vows, no respect for the sanctity of union, just a pronouncement as casual as assigning work details. That night, Big Joe came to my cabin. He was kind in his way, kinder than he could have been. But his kindness didn't matter, because I wasn't there. I'd learned to leave my body, to float somewhere above it, while he did what Master Whitmore had ordered him to do. Afterward, lying in the darkness, I felt something inside me break. Not my body would heal, but something deeper, something essential. The part of me that had believed in possibilities, that had dared to dream of a different future, that part died that night. And I grieved for it like I would grieve for a person because, in a way, I was grieving for a person. The girl I'd been, who'd believed she might someday be free. The months that followed were gray and tasteless, like living in a world drained of color. I moved through my days like a ghost, performing my duties with mechanical precision, but feeling nothing. Cook Bethy watched me with worried eyes. Old Thomas tried to draw me out with books and conversation, but I couldn't find it in myself to care about words anymore. What was the point of reading about freedom when I'd never tasted? What good were beautiful ideas when my reality was so ugly? I wasn't pregnant, and I knew Master Whitmore was growing impatient. He'd comment on it sometimes, casually cruel observations about my failure to produce. Big Joe, dutiful as ever, kept trying, and I kept leaving my body, floating away to somewhere else, somewhere distant and numb. Then one morning in early spring, I woke up to the sound of crying. It was coming from the cabin next to mine, where Lucy lived. Lucy, my childhood friend who'd promised we'd always be sisters. I dressed quickly and went to her, finding her hunched on the floor, her face swollen from weeping. "They sold my babies," she said, her voice raw and broken. "Master Whitmore sold my babies. Both of them. The trader came yesterday and took them while I was in the fields. My girls, Dinah, Rose. They took my little girls, and I didn't even get to say goodbye." I held her while she sobbed, and I felt something stir inside me, something that pushed through the numbness like a chute pushing through frozen ground.
Rage.
pure, clarifying rage. This is what we were to them. This is what Master Whitmore had planned for me. A future of bearing children who would be sold away like livestock, of having my heart ripped out again and again, of loving people I had no power to protect. This was the future they'd stolen from me and replaced with this nightmare. And suddenly, the numbness cracked. The grief I'd been holding at bay came flooding through, but it wasn't the paralyzing grief from before. It was hot and alive and fierce. It burned away the resignation, the acceptance, the hollow obedience. I'd made a choice to protect my mama, and I didn't regret that choice. But I'd let that choice kill something in me, let it convince me that I had no power, no agency, no right to resist. I'd become exactly what they wanted me to be, a broken thing, too defeated to fight back. Lucy's broken sobs echoed in my ears, and I thought of all the women in the quarters, all the mothers who'd had their children torn away, all the girls who'd been used and discarded, all the women who'd had futures stolen, just like mine. And I thought of the children not yet born, the ones who'd come into this world the way I had, already destined for suffering. Something crystallized inside me then, hard and clear as diamond. They'd taken my future, the future I'd planned, the future I'd dreamed of. But old Thomas had been right. They couldn't take everything. They couldn't take my mind, my knowledge, my understanding of what was true and what was a lie. They couldn't take my ability to teach, to share, to plant seeds of resistance in others. If I couldn't have the future I'd wanted, then I would build a different one. Not for myself, it was too late for that, but for others. For the children in the quarters who needed to know they were human, who needed to understand that the chains on their bodies didn't have to chain their minds. For the women who needed to know they weren't alone in their suffering, that their grief was witnessed and valid. I couldn't run. I couldn't free my body, but I could do what old Thomas had done for me. I could teach. I could pass on the gift of reading, the dangerous knowledge that could transform a slave into a thinking, questioning, resisting person. I could create a different kind of future, a future that lived in the minds of children, that would grow and spread like roots beneath the soil, invisible to the masters, but strong and enduring. It was a small rebellion, a quiet resistance, but it was mine, and it was possible. I started that very week. I gathered the children in the quarters when the white folks were occupied, when the overseers were drunk or distracted, in the precious few hours between the end of work and the beginning of sleep. I used a stick to draw letters in the dirt. I whispered words and made them repeat them. I told them stories from the books I'd read, stories about people who were brave and free. I taught them carefully, cautiously, making sure they understood the danger. If they were caught reading, they'd be beaten or worse. If I was caught teaching them, I'd be sold south or killed. We were all risking everything. But they came anyway. 5 children at first, then 7, then 10. They were hungry for knowledge the way I'd been hungry for it, desperate to understand the wider world, eager to claim some small piece of power for themselves. Old Thomas helped, of course. He'd been waiting for this, had known all along that I'd eventually find my way back to resistance. Together, we created a secret school, moving it from place to place, teaching in different locations to avoid detection. We used the Bible when we could get it, newspapers when we couldn't, anything with words on it. And slowly, I came back to life. Not the life I'd planned, not the future I dreamed of, but a life that had meaning, a future that belonged not just to me, but to all of us. Every child who learned to read was a small victory against the people who'd tried to break us. Every mind that opened was a crack in the foundation of slavery. One night, after a particularly successful lesson where one of the younger boys had read his first full sentence, I walked back to my cabin feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. Not hope for my own freedom, I'd made my peace with the likelihood that I'd die in bondage, but hoped that the seeds I was planting might grow into something beautiful, something that would outlast me. I found Big Joe waiting outside my cabin. He usually came to me on Saturday nights, as regular and unemotional as any other chore. But tonight was Wednesday, and there was something different in his expression, a flicker of something almost like thought. "I know what you're doing," he said quietly. My blood turned to ice. If he told Master Whitmore, "I seen you with the children," he continued, "teaching them their letters." I started to deny it, but he held up his hand. "I ain't gonna tell," he said. "I wanted you to know that. Whatever you're doing, whatever you're teaching them, I ain't gonna tell." We looked at each other in the darkness. This man I'd been forced to marry. This man I'd thought of as nothing more than a hollow shell. And I saw, for the first time, that he wasn't empty at all. He'd just learned to hide himself so deep that even he had almost forgotten he was there.
Why? I asked.
He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "My mama could read. Long time ago, before I was born. Her first master taught her, thought it was amusing to have an educated slave. When she was sold south to Master Whitmore's father, she tried to teach me. I was maybe 5 years old. Master caught us." His voice dropped to barely a whisper. "He beat her to death in front of me. Took 3 days for her to die. I felt tears sting my eyes. I forgot everything she taught me," Big Joe continued. "Made myself forget, because remembering hurt too much. But sometimes I dream about her voice, teaching me the sounds of letters. And I think she'd want me to protect you. So you can do for other children what she tried to do for me." He turned and walked away before I could respond, disappearing into the darkness of the quarters. I stood there for a long time, understanding that I'd been wrong about him, wrong about so many things. Even here, even in the depths of our oppression, there was resistance. Even in the most beaten down among us, there was still a spark of humanity that couldn't be extinguished. We weren't just surviving. We were building something, a network of knowledge, a community of resistance, a future that existed despite every attempt to destroy it. Word of my teaching spread quietly through the slave community, traveling along the invisible networks that connected plantations across the county. Within months, I was teaching not just children from Whitmore land, but students who slipped away from neighboring farms, risking the lash to learn their letters. We developed codes and signals, ways of warning each other when danger was near. The lessons moved constantly. The woods one night, the tobacco barn another, the cellar beneath the old smokehouse when we needed shelter from the rain. I became bolder. The grief that had nearly destroyed me had transformed into something fiercer, something that couldn't be cowed or broken. I'd lost Samuel, lost the future I'd dreamed of, lost the girl I'd been. But what emerged from that loss was harder, sharper, more dangerous to the people who thought they owned me. I started teaching not just reading, but ideas. I told my students about the Underground Railroad, about the free states, about the abolitionists in the North who believed slavery was wrong. I taught them that they were human beings with inherent worth, that no one had the right to own another person, that the laws and customs that enslaved us were created by men and could be destroyed by men. I was teaching them to think, and thinking slaves were dangerous. Cook Bethy warned me to be careful. "You're getting reckless," she said one evening, catching me sneaking primer pages hidden in my apron. "People are talking. If it gets back to Master Whitmore—"
"Let them talk," I said.
"Let everyone know that there are slaves on this plantation who can read and write and think for themselves. Maybe it'll make the masters nervous. Maybe it'll make them realize they can't keep us ignorant forever. It'll make them angry," Cook Bethy said. "And angry white folks are lethal." She was right, of course. But I was past caring about safety. Every day I spent teaching was a day I reclaimed a piece of myself, a piece of the future they'd tried to steal. If they killed me for it, at least I'd die having done something that mattered. The danger came, as it always does, from an unexpected direction. There was a house slave on the Crawford plantation named Thomas. No relation to old Thomas, just the unfortunate coincidence of a common name. Young Thomas was bitter and angry, twisted by years of abuse into someone who survived by currying favor with his masters. He informed on other slaves, reported escape plans, did whatever he could to stay in the good graces of the white folks, even if it meant betraying his own people. Someone must have mentioned my school to him, or perhaps he saw something that made him suspicious. Either way, he went to his master, and his master went to Master Whitmore, and one Sunday evening the blow fell. They came for old Thomas first. 3 white men, including Master Whitmore and the overseer, stormed into his cabin and dragged him out into the yard. They'd found books hidden under his floorboards, evidence of his literacy, proof of his crime. The beating was public, meant as a warning to the rest of us. They tied old Thomas to the whipping post and took turns with the lash, each stroke accompanied by questions. Who had he taught? Who else could read? Where were the books hidden? Old Thomas never said a word. Not a single word. He took the beating in silence, his face turned toward the sky, his lips moving in what might have been prayer or might have been defiance. After 50 lashes, he passed out. They dumped water on him to wake him up and started again. I watched from where they'd forced all of us to stand, witnesses to what happened to slaves who stepped above their station. I watched and I memorized every detail. The sound of the whip cutting flesh, the blood running down old Thomas's back, the satisfied expressions on the white men's faces. I memorized it so I would never forget what we were fighting against, what we were risking everything to resist. They came for me that night. Master Whitmore himself walked into my cabin where I sat waiting, knowing this moment would come, knowing I'd been preparing for it since the moment they dragged old Thomas from his home. "I know you've been teaching slaves to read," he said. "That old man won't talk, but others have. You're going to tell me who you taught, where you kept the books, who else was involved in this insurrection." Insurrection. That's what he called education. The very idea that we might learn to read was tantamount to rebellion in his eyes. And he was right, it was rebellion. It was the most dangerous rebellion of all. "I taught the children," I said calmly. "I taught them that they are human beings created by God with minds and souls. I taught them to read, so they could see for themselves that the lies you tell about our inferiority are nothing but lies. I taught them to think so they wouldn't grow up as ignorant as you are." His face turned purple. He struck me across the face, hard enough that I tasted blood. "Names," he snarled. "Give me the names of every slave you corrupted." I looked at him and I smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who'd already lost everything she cared about and therefore had nothing left to fear. "No," I said. He beat me then with his fists and his boots, beat me with the same rage he'd beaten old Thomas with. But I'd prepared for this. I'd been preparing for this since the day I'd decided to fight back. I went away into my mind, into the place I'd built during all those nights with Big Joe, the place where my body could be hurt but myself remained untouchable. When he was done, when he stood over me panting and furious, I looked up at him and said clearly, "You can beat me all you want. You can kill me, but I won't give you their names. Those children belong to themselves, and you can't have them." They sold me 3 days later. Not south to the sugar plantations. Even in his rage, Master Whitmore wanted to recoup his investment. He sold me to a slave trader heading west to Mississippi, where I'd be resold to whoever offered the highest price. My mama came to say goodbye. She held my hands through the bars of the pen where they kept us waiting for transport, and she cried in a way I'd never seen her cry before. "I'm sorry," she said. "I'm sorry you stayed for me. You should have run when you had the chance." "I made my choice," I told her, "and I'd make it again." "But your future," she whispered. "They took your future." I squeezed her hands.
"No, Mama."
"They took one future, but I built another one. Every child I taught, every mind I opened, that's my future too. It'll keep growing long after I'm gone. They can't take that away." She looked at me with something like awe, this woman who'd given birth to me in chains and tried to protect me from the worst of this world. "You're braver than I ever was," she said. "I learned it from you," I told her. "Every day you survived, every day you endured. That took more courage than anything I've done." Big Joe came too, in the moments before they loaded us onto the wagons. He pressed something into my hand, a small bundle wrapped in cloth. "From old Thomas," he said quietly, before he died. Old Thomas had died 2 days after the beating, his body giving out from the wounds. He'd never told them anything, never betrayed a single student. He protected us all with his silence. I unwrapped the bundle with shaking hands. Inside was a small, worn book, the Bible old Thomas had used to teach me to read all those years ago. On the inside cover, in careful letters, he'd written a message. "Pass it on. The future belongs to those who can read it." I clutched the book to my chest and looked at Big Joe. "Thank you," I said, "for everything, for protecting me, for being more than they tried to make you be." He nodded once, his face carefully neutral, but I saw the grief in his eyes. "Teach them," he said. "Wherever you go, teach them." "I will," I promised. "I'll teach them, and they'll teach others, and someday there'll be so many of us who can read and think and question that they won't be able to stop us." The journey west was brutal. We traveled in a coffle, a line of enslaved people chained together at the ankles, walking 20 miles a day under the merciless sun. At night they locked us in pens like animals. Some of the people in my coffle cried. Some prayed. Some retreated into themselves, too broken to react. But I carried old Thomas's Bible hidden against my skin, and every time we stopped, every moment the traders weren't watching closely, I pulled it out and read to the others. Quietly, carefully, I read them passages about freedom, about justice, about Moses leading his people out of bondage. I read them the words that had first opened my eyes. All men are created equal. Some of them had never heard anyone read before. They listened with expressions of wonder, as if I was performing magic. And in a way, I was showing them that the marks on paper held power, that knowledge was possible, that their minds could contain worlds beyond their chains. One woman, older than me with gray threading through her hair, asked me to teach her a word. Just one word, she said, something she could hold on to. I taught her freedom. F-R-E-D-O-M. She repeated it over and over, tracing the letters in the dirt with her finger, memorizing the shape of it. "Freedom," she whispered. "Freedom." By the time we reached Mississippi, half the people in my coffle could recognize that word. They'd written it on their hearts, even if they never learned to write it on paper. I was sold at auction in Natchez to a plantation owner named Sterling who needed house servants for his growing operation. The auction block was degrading. They inspected me like livestock, checked my teeth, examined my body, discussed my potential for breeding as if I wasn't standing right there, hearing every word. But I stood straight. I looked them in the eye. I let them see that whatever they bought, they weren't getting a broken, docile thing. They were getting Dinah Rose Harper. I was sold at auction in Natchez to a plantation owner named Sterling who needed house servants. The auction block was degrading, but I stood straight and looked them in the eye. Whatever they bought, they weren't getting someone broken. The Sterling plantation was larger than Whitmore's, with over 100 enslaved people working the cotton fields. The big house was grander, the cruelty more refined but no less vicious. I was assigned to work as a lady's maid to Mistress Sterling, a nervous woman who required constant attention. I learned quickly how things worked. I kept my head down during the day, performed my duties with silent efficiency, and gave them no reason to watch me closely. But at night, I began again. There was a young girl in the quarters named Penny, maybe 8 years old, who reminded me of myself at that age, curious, bright-eyed, hungry for something beyond the narrow world she'd been born into. I started with her, teaching her letters in the dark hours after work, using charcoal on scraps of wood. Then there was her brother James, then their mother May, then others who heard whispers of the woman who could read, who could teach, who carried knowledge like a flame that couldn't be extinguished. Master Sterling never knew. Mistress Sterling never suspected. I was too careful, too practiced now at hiding my resistance. I'd learned from the mistakes that had gotten me caught at Whitmore's plantation. I taught smaller groups, changed locations constantly, made sure my students understood that secrecy was survival. And slowly, the network grew, just like before. Just like it would keep growing as long as there were people willing to learn and teachers willing to risk everything to pass on knowledge. Years passed. My body grew older, bent by labor and scarred by punishment. I never had the children Master Sterling hoped I'd produce. Something in me was broken that way, whether from grief or my body's own rebellion, I never knew. But I birthed something else. Generations of students who carried literacy like a secret weapon, who passed it to their children, who kept the flame burning. I never saw Samuel again, never knew if he made it to freedom or died trying. I never returned to Alabama, never saw my mama or Big Joe again. Letters were impossible. News traveled slowly, or not at all. They existed in my memory, preserved in the amber of the past. But I wasn't alone. I had my students. I had the future I was building one reader at a time. Old Thomas's Bible stayed with me, hidden and treasured, its pages worn soft from use. I taught from it every chance I got, and I added my own message inside the cover, beneath old Thomas's words. They took my future, but they couldn't take my purpose.
Teach. Resist.
Remember you are human. One night, when I was perhaps 40 years old, I sat with a group of young people in the woods beyond the quarters. 10 of them, ranging from 12 to 20 years old, all able to read now, all transformed by the dangerous gift of literacy. One of the young men asked me, "Miss Dinah, was it worth it? All the risk, all the pain, was teaching us worth what it cost you?" I looked at their faces in the firelight, at the intelligence shining in their eyes, at the way they held themselves with a dignity that came from knowing their own worth. "They took my future," I said slowly. "The life I planned, the man I loved, the freedom I dreamed of, they took all of that. But they couldn't take my ability to create a different future. Every one of you is that future. Every word you read, every idea you understand, every time you teach someone else, that's the future they tried to steal from me, growing despite them because of you." I thought of Samuel, wondered if he was free somewhere, living the life we'd planned. I hoped he was. I hoped he'd found happiness. But I'd found something too. Not the happiness I'd imagined, not the freedom I'd craved, but purpose, meaning, a future that lived in the minds of others, that would outlast my body, that would keep spreading long after I was gone. They couldn't take that. They never could. The young man nodded slowly, understanding. "We'll keep teaching," he said. "We'll make sure the future keeps growing." "I know you will," I said. And I did know. I knew that the future they'd tried to steal from me had transformed into something they could never destroy, a legacy of resistance, a chain of knowledge passing from hand to hand, mind to mind, heart to heart. They'd taken my future, but I'd built a new one from the ashes, and it would burn brighter than they could ever imagine. They took my future, so I became the future itself, living in every mind I freed.